Faithfulness is to believe that who God made you is better than what your flesh has said you were made to do. Faithfulness is God is a decision that you say, okay, I want this, I desire this, I think I'm entitled to this, I think I don't deserve to be mistreated like that. I want to lead my own life, but I will instead relinquish those fleshly desires and choose a singular desire. I will be faithful to my God because I believe his plan for my life is better than my own plan. And he's a better leader in my life than I am in my own life. And I am the only common denominator of all the issues that are wrong in my life. I am the issue. And so instead of continuing to lead, I'm going to give my God the leadership. Today, we're going to be in Judges chapter 14. If you have a Bible, go ahead and turn there with me. We're continuing our walk through the Old Testament in our series, The Ministry of God's Promise. This series has been such an encouragement for me. And over the last year or so, we have been walking through the Old Testament. But I have to tell you, I have finally mapped out the rest of the series, and it's going to take us about an additional year to finish the series. So for 2 years, we're in the Old Testament. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. We're going to have a great time walking through it. Today will be our last sermon really anchored in the book of Judges, because throughout the book of Judges, the same cycle plays out again and again and again. We've talked about this before, but this is a summary of what happens in the book of Judges. In the book of Judges, the people of Israel turn to idol worship. They look at the gods of their community, the gods of the Canaanites, and they become followers of them. They worship them. And because they worship the gods that are unjust and evil and violent, they themselves become unjust and evil and violent. And so they sin in the eyes of their God. As they sin, God in his mercy gives them over to oppression, to allow them to experience the hardship so that they would turn away from those idols and return to him. During that suffering, they cry out to the Lord, the true God of Israel. They say, "The Lord, please help us." And God helps them by sending them a deliverer, a judge. We've read a couple of those stories in the book of Judges already. We've read the story of Deborah, the story of Gideon. These are some of the stories of the judges, but there are 12 of them. 12 of them that go through this same exact cycle. And after the deliverer comes and frees the people from the oppressive hands of the Canaanites, God brings a period of peace. That period of peace lasts 30, 40, 50, 60, even 80 years. And at the end of that period of peace, what happens is Israel begins to drift back into a state of idolatry. And it makes the cycle repeat again and again and again. As I mentioned, it happens 12 times in the book of Judges. We've hit some of those judges, but today we get to our last judge that we're going to talk about. The judge we're talking about today is the judge Samson. We got O's. You know his story if you're familiar at all with the Bible, the man with long hair who has the strength of 10 men. Who is a very strange character. Because of his story, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to tell you everything I'm going to talk about up front, and then we're going to walk through his story, and then I'll give you a relevant application. But today's lesson is for the brothers. So if you're here and you're a sister, you're invited to stay, to learn, to hold the brothers accountable, to kind of maybe jot some notes down if you're a single sister trying to figure out who to marry. I really think today's lesson is important, and periodically I think it's important to speak to our men because historically there has been a shortage of godly men. Men who lead their lives, their families, and their community well. In fact, one of the most tragic Bible verses, in my opinion, in all the Bible is found in Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 30. In Ezekiel 22, Ezekiel is being shown the exile of his people and why God's judgment has come upon the people. And God, speaking to Ezekiel, tells him this is the reason his judgment has come. He says, I searched for a man among them who would build up the walls and stand in the gap before me. God saying, I was looking for a man who would stand between the idol worship, the worship of idols and the Lord Almighty. I was looking for someone who would guide their families well, who would guide their wives well, who would be honest and upright and faithful. I looked and I looked and I looked, and you know what? I found no one. And so I'm handing you over, your people over, to Babylonian captivity. I'm bringing about justice. And the problem is that God looks and looks and looks at this time, the time of the judges, and seems to find no one. No one with the character, the wisdom, the faithfulness required to redeem his people, to stand in the gap. I look for such a man, and he found none. Perhaps if God was speaking this verse to us today, he would say that I am looking for men of integrity who believe that truth is better than convenient lies. I'm looking for a man of courage who is willing to brave the waves of fear and discouragement and brave the waves of dishonesty. I'm looking for a man who will stand up for those who will not stand up for themselves. I'm looking for a man who is willing to lay down his life for his bride like Christ was willing to lay down his life for the church. I'm looking for a man who will impart spiritual wisdom to the next generation. I'm looking for men who will stand in the gap. Maybe that's what God would say to us. And I believe with all my heart that if God looked for such a man in this faith community, in this church, I don't think he would find one. I think he would find many. I think our men are men whose heart beat for God. I see men in our church, in the Broward church, who stand in the gap between the false teachings of the world and the penetrative forces of those false teachings. I see men of courage in the onslaught of the world all of the time. And so, in order to keep us in that place, I want to talk to you for a little bit, because you are facing a lot of opposition to be godly men. And so from the very onset of this discussion, I want to tell you what this sermon is about. Through the life of Samson, we're going to talk about the 4 things that make strong men stumble and the 1 thing that builds them up again. As I mentioned, we're going to be in Judges chapter 14. If you're there, get ready, because we have to look at a little bit of a spectrum of Samson's life. His life happens over 2 long chapters. So we're not going to look at all of it, but we're going to look at a lot of it and see who he is, what he's about, and how he squandered a lot of his potential of becoming the man he should have been. If you want a summary of Samson's story because you don't want to pay any more attention, this is what Samson's life is about. Samson was a man whose strength was overshadowed by his weak will. He was strong. He had everything a man could ever want: power, position, authority. He had everything. He was able, competent, capable. But his life was squandered. His life was shipwrecked by the fact that he was willing to give up everything that God had given him because of his desires. He wanted a lot. He wanted and he wanted and he wanted, and it led him on a path of complete and utter disaster. Let me tell you a little bit about him before we read the story. Samson in Judges chapter 13 is called to be a judge. He's a special kid. God introduces him in a very particular way. He calls him a Nazirite. Nazirite comes from the Hebrew word, means to be separate. If you are looking for more about that, it's found in Numbers chapter 6. But basically, a Nazirite takes a vow. The vow includes 3 important details that makes them distinct from the rest of the community. 1, no drinking alcohol. 2, no cutting your hair. 3, no touching dead things. This is the oath that Samson grew up in. This is the oath that his parents would have taken on his behalf and that he would have affirmed as he got older. But instead of following these 3 oaths, what Samson does is he follows 4 attitudes of his heart that literally destroy him. These are the 4 attitudes we see in the life of Samson that destroyed his life, that have the potential to destroy any man of God. We see the attitudes of lust. The attitude of lust says, I want what I want. I'm going to get what I want when I want it. We see the attitude of entitlement, which is I deserve to have what I want. It's not just that I want it, it's that I deserve it. I am the type of man that should get it because I am worthy of getting it. The third attitude is the attitude of pride, where you believe no one should tell you how to live. Not my wife, not my family, not my community, and certainly not my God. And the last attitude that Samson has that destroys his life is the attitude of anger, where he refuses to be the one disrespected. He refuses to be the one belittled, and so he will do anything it takes, and in his anger, he will sin. Samson, throughout his life, will show us these four things again and again and again, but I want to highlight four small scenes that give us just a little bit of the breadth of his story so that we can come to a conclusion about these characteristics, and then I can give you the one thing that really changes his life. His life is a tragic story with a really beautiful twist at the end. Judges chapter 14, are you there? All right, you're sort of there. Let's see. Judges 14, verse 1. This is what it says. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. Samson is like the very first superhero. He's strong as 10 men, and all of his strength, we learn, comes from his hair. It's this weird little detail in the story, but that's what it says. And so for his entire life, he is protecting Israel from the Philistines. At least that's what he's supposed to do. But instead of doing that, what he does is he uses his strength to get what he wants. And here he says to his family, hey, you know that girl that I saw over there? She's cute. I want her. Get her for me. Now, what's the problem? Well, she's a Philistine woman. She's an idol worshiper, and the law is clear. You shall not intermarry with those who do not worship the Lord your God. But at the moment, she looks better than obedience looks. And he says, I would like her, so get her for me. I don't care what God says. I don't care what you say, Dad or Mom. I don't care what's right and what's wrong and what's wise. I want what I want. He shows us the attitude of lust. Look, lust is when any man or any woman sees something that they desire and begin to think that they have to have it. They're going to get it, and no matter what happens, they're going to get it. And the lust, when it becomes full blossom in any life of any man, what happens is people forget about their God, they forget about their family, they forget about their wife, they lose sight of their legacy, all because they want what they want right now. You've seen women do this, but I see men do it more than women have. They see something shiny, they see something nice, they want to buy a new boat. And so they spend all day, all night on the internet trying to figure out when they can get that boat, how to make it happen. What if we did this, and if I cut this corner, if I don't pay my taxes, if I do this, and I do that, then finally maybe I'll open up a company that'll allow me to get my boat for free, and and you do everything it takes, and it doesn't matter what happens, it doesn't matter how much debt you go into, you swipe the card to get what you want. I want what I want, and I will get it. Or they see a new shiny girl. You know, my family is a nice family. I have these 2 kids and this wife, but she's aging. And I would like a more shiny wife, a more beautiful wife, because that would really help me to feel like good about my own self and my own aging and the decaying I see in the mirror. And so they go and in their lust, they pursue a new wife, they pursue a new girl, they pursue a new something, and what happens is behind them, they leave a wake of destruction. Lust. I've learned this about lust. Lust makes you forget who God made you to be. You were given potential and power and the right to, and every ability to do great things and right things in the community, and you use all of your ability and your time and your resources instead to get what you want, and you have forgotten why God called you in the first place. The people who struggle with lust will always choose what they want, and they will begin to conflate what they want with what God wants for them. I think about 1 John 2, verse 16, for everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. They think that you know what God really wants? God wants me to have these nice, shiny things. That's what God wants from me. But those who are able to stand up against the lust can identify that that comes from the world. Brothers, I have to tell you, if you're stuck in a cycle of desire and desire and desire and desire and desire, you are in a dangerous cycle that has the ability to shipwreck your faith. Get out of it. Learn that those desires don't come from God, but they come from the world. Stand up against them. This is the first sign of Samson's life that his life was headed towards a really bad place. But we continue in the stories, Judges chapter 14 verse 6. Samson sees that girl, wants that girl, goes to meet that girl, and on his way, the story takes a weird turn. He's ambushed by a lion. That's what the story says. Judges chapter 14 verse 6, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands as he might have torn a young goat. I just want you to notice how strong Samson is. They identify that he tore young goats with his bare hands. I don't know how strong you have to be to tear a young goat, but that seems ridiculously strong. And they're like, no. You know how he would tear a young goat? You're like, no, I don't. He could do that to a lion. To a lion. Think of the strength of this guy. Sometime later, after tearing this lion in half on his way back from seeing this Philistine girl he was never supposed to marry, he goes to investigate the carcass of this dead lion. He's expecting, I would imagine, to see it full of maggots or full of flies, but instead he finds a colony of bees living inside of it. They have taken up residency in this dead carcass, and they're beginning to produce honey. And so, what Samson does is he reaches inside the dead carcass of the lion and eats some of the honey. Number one, this is disgusting. But truthfully, isn't that kind of par for the course? Men are nasty. We are leaders, we are awesome, but we are nasty. You don't think you're nasty? Here's a thought. Think about how men determine whether a pair of underwear is dirty or not. They smell it. They put their nose where their butt once was. That's disgusting. Y'all are nasty. Don't pretend like you're not. Y'all are nasty, but also, what is he not supposed to touch? Dead things. Again, Samson betrays the same God that gave him the power to rip apart the lion. He betrays a vow that was supposed to be his blessing, that was supposed to be who he was. He betrays that vow because he's entitled. He's entitled. The answer to us looking at these questions about why Samson would do it is that people do this all the time. They betray their God who blessed them for all sorts of stupid things because they think they deserve it. They think that they deserve to have what they want. I deserve it. I work hard. I deserve it. I have been faithful to you for such a long time, and I deserve it. I deserve it because I've been slaving away. I deserve it because I need that new thing. I deserve it. I killed the lion. I deserve to eat from the lion. It doesn't matter what God says. I deserve praise. I deserve accolades. I deserve respect. I deserve it. And I think men who have this spirit of entitlement forget that you know what you actually deserve? Death. The wages of your sin is death. Everything else is a gift from God. Everything is a gift from God, but entitlement ruined your life by convincing you that you have the right to have the things that you have. That the resources, the car, the house, the wife, the family, all of that was not given to you as a gift by God, but you deserved it because of who you were. Let me tell you, it's a dangerous cycle. It's a dangerous cycle to forget that God is the source of the blessings of your life. He wants what he wants, and he thinks that he deserves it, and he's going to have it regardless. The story continues. Samson's new fiance is ready to get married. In the story, they have a betrothal period that eventually ends, and now it's time for him to marry this Philistine woman. The wedding preparations were made, and Samson is notified that it's time to come back and come to the hometown of his fiance and get married. And so he goes there, and for 7 days, they have this big feast. And for the 7 days he's there, Do you know what he does? Well, let me remind you what he's not supposed to do. No drinking, no cutting his hair, no touching dead things. He's already touched some dead things. And here at the 7-day feast, they throw a kegger. It's a party. It's a party and there is alcohol everywhere. And he has made a decision that he will participate in that. And so for 7 days, Samson drinks and gets drunk. Do you know why? Because he is full of pride. Pride tells us no one is allowed to tell me how to live. But isn't this what happens to strong men over and over again? God has given them great potential to do great things for his mighty name, and yet we think the God who made us can't tell us how to live. This is pride. So now Samson is very likely drunk. He's very likely drunk because he refuses to be told by God what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. And so he gives up the beauty and the joy and the possibilities that he has in his life, all because he has decided that he will be the architect of his future. The Bible text tells us here in this chapter that Samson is joined in this party, this wedding feast, by 30 Philistine men, 30 additional young men. And Samson decides to challenge them to a riddle about the lion killing and the honey. Again, I think he had to have been drunk because what a ridiculous thing is about to happen here. Samson says to them this, he says, let me tell you a riddle. If you can give me the answer within 7 days of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. If you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. They're gambling. Hey, I'm going to tell you a riddle. If you get the answer to the riddle, I'll give you something that represents money, clothing, and linen. And they go, okay, tell us the riddle. Let's hear it. He replied, out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. That's the riddle. They're supposed to figure out what happened with him. It's a story. For 3 days, they could not give an answer. For 3 days, they can't understand the riddle. They get frustrated. And eventually they corner his wife-to-be in the middle of this marriage event or this wedding event. And they tell her, they coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to steal our property? And they relentlessly plead with this woman, please, please, tell us. And so the Philistine men eventually convince the wife, or the future wife, to tell the answer. And she says, look, it's about the lion, and he ate it, and there was honey there. And so they have the answer, and they go to Samson, and they say, I know the answer. They tell him the answer, and Samson is furious. He has been disrespected by his wife, disrespected by the woman, and disrespected by those people. He knows that his new bride has betrayed him. And so enraged, the Bible tells us that he travels nearly 25 miles to a separate Philistine town, and he kills 30 men in order to take their garments. And then he travels 25 miles back after killing those 30 men and gives the garments to the people. Did you catch it? In his anger, Samson kills 30 men. This is supposed to be a man of God. But here he is enticed by violent anger, unrighteous anger. He should have never been disrespected by that woman. And maybe your anger, men, doesn't produce the death of 30 people. I mean, if it does, you should be in jail. But it probably has produced the death of a lot of relationships. You were so mad at your kids that you did that thing or said that thing you should never have said. You were so mad at your wife for disrespecting you in front of your friends that you took it out on her in that negative way that still has been imprinted on her life. Your coworkers or your boss disrespected you, and so your testimony has been shattered because you acted in anger and in rage. I've learned this in James chapter 1, verse 20. It says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. I've seen many men stand up and say, it's okay for me to be angry. And I remind them again and again and again that human anger does not produce the things of God. When you are struggling in rage and anger, you better check yourself. Check yourself. Samson destroyed his life. And I could go on and on. These 4 things happen again and again like a cycle in his life. We could talk about the foxes that Samson used to burn down a field. We could talk about the killing of 1,000 men. We could talk about his arrogance, his lust, again, his pride, his entitlement. And here's the thing. I don't know what it would be for you. And I don't know which one of these things it is for you. I don't know if it's your lust, you're saying, I want what I want, or your entitlement, saying, I deserve it. I deserve to have it. Your pride, your anger. But here's what I do know. Here's what I know. If you have one of these attitudes that are unchecked, you are headed in a bad direction. I know this because of the way that Samson's life plays out. If you fast forward to the end of Samson's life, we see perhaps the strongest man who ever lived from birth, who had God's hand upon him and God's spirit who had given him strength. He is in utter despair. The closing drama of Samson's life is something that if you have been around the Bible for any length of time, you know. It's an incredible story. The final chapter begins when once again he fixes his lust on a woman, but this time a woman named Delilah. So Samson, his enemies pay her, Delilah, to discover what the source of his strength is. And Delilah, after being offered 550 years worth of wages, that's like millions of dollars in today's money, eventually Delilah gets it out of him. See, Samson was supposed to be the protector of Israel, but his entire life he'd use his strength for himself, for his desires, and for the things that he desperately wanted. That's what his life had been all about. It's been about himself. And so he never thought that God would ever take away that power. And over time, after being worn down by Delilah for the sake of a fortune, Delilah gives in. This is what it says. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. He told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I've been a Nazirite, dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. And so, Delilah, with this new information, goes to the Philistine spies and tells them, that man, that strong man that's been dominating our nation and has been a thorn in our flesh, I know exactly why he is strong. He's strong because of his hair. So they come, they cut his hair, the Philistines arrest him, and while this is all happening, we read these terrifying words. Judges chapter 16, verse 20. He did not know that the Lord had left him. What does years of pride, lust, entitlement, what does years of anger, where does it lead a once righteous man? Well, Samson had long been blinded by his pride and blinded by his lust and blinded by his rage and blinded by his arrogance, and now he is blinded by his captors, who according to verse 21, chapter 16, they gouged out his eyes. And they placed him in the middle of the temple where there was like a wheat grinder. And he, like a mule, was placed in the middle of this temple to spin a wheel that grinded wheat in a circle. That was going to be the rest of his life as people worshiping the gods of Baal and the Canaanite gods celebrated and looked at this fiasco of what once was a man of God. And you look at this story and you say, well, what does it mean for a righteous man? Are you telling me that if I'm not vigilant, someone's going to gouge my eyes out? No, I'm actually not telling you that at all. I'm telling you something worse could happen. It could be that you continue to live with those attitudes and you turn 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 and you look back at a failed marriage and you realized, oh my, it was all my fault. I'm going to tell you, there may be a day if you continue in those attitudes of rage, of entitlement, of pride, there may be a day where Christmas time comes around and you look around and you think, well, will my kids come and be with me? And they won't want to come spend time with you. Do you know why? Because they have no respect for you. Because of the life that you lived. And they don't want to be in your presence. And you'll have to live with that because of the decisions that you made to use the power and the abilities that God had gifted you with for yourself all of the time. There may be a time where your private life becomes public and you don't want to go to public anymore because you've been humiliated by the actions and the choices and the lust of your life. This is where sin leads godly people. Sin captures them, takes a hold of them, strips them of everything good in them, and then leaves them humiliated in the middle of a broken, destroyed world. But here's the deal, men. It doesn't have to go that way. If you're a follower of Christ, I want you to know that there is spiritual greatness in you because the Holy Spirit is in you. And no matter how you have become, what you've been into, or how you've kind of floundered away, or how difficult it's been, I want to encourage you that you can always come back to God's grace. Even in the worst moments in your life, you can always come back to God's grace. And the reason I know it is because of the story of Samson. So here he is, blind, weak, humiliated, robbed of all his manliness. And here's what Samson's story tells me. Just because you failed doesn't mean you have to be remembered as a failure. Here's how his life ends. He's exhausted from spinning that thing day after day, week after week, hour after hour. And so he asks his captors this question. Samson said to the servants who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars." He's blind, he's weak. They're not afraid of it anymore. "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple so I may lean against them." Verse 28. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, "O sovereign Lord." This is the first time we see Samson praying this way. "Remember me. Oh God, please strengthen me just once more." Just once more. I've messed up 1,000 times. I have done more wrong to your people than I can even possibly name. I can't count the number of times that I've been just a source of terror in people's lives. But just one more time. All I need, God, is one more moment. One more, give me mercy one more time, and I will turn my life around. This is the prodigal son coming to his senses, thinking, if I could just come to my father's house one time, he will save me of my sin. And here at the lowest point of his life, in the middle of this public humiliation, no one believes anything good can come from this man. He prays this private prayer: "God, use me, give me strength, and I will leverage whatever life I have left for your glory and for your goodness." I've learned that when a man is down, he is not out. If he has just a little bit more life left in him, then Samson reached towards the two center pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against it, his right hand on one, his left hand on the other. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." This is what he was supposed to do the whole time: protect Israel from the Philistines. Let me die with them. Then he pushed with all of his might. He didn't have a lot, but God helped him this last moment. And down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus, he killed many more, when he died than when he lived. In other words, he finally became the judge he was supposed to be. His whole life was a disaster. His whole life was a disaster. But he chose that with whatever life he had left or you have left, do something great with it. He chose at the very end of his life, he's going to do something great with the life he had. And in this moment, he showed what really he should have had the whole time. He showed a faithfulness in God. Faithfulness is to believe that who God made you is better than what your flesh has said you were made to do. Faithfulness is God is a decision that you say, okay, I want this, I desire this, I think I'm entitled to this, I think I don't deserve to be mistreated like that. I want to lead my own life, but I will instead relinquish those fleshly desires and choose a singular desire. I will be faithful to my God because I believe that his plan for my life is better than my own plan. And he's a better leader in my life than I am in my own life. And I am the only common denominator of all the issues that are wrong in my life. I am the issue. And so instead of continuing to lead, I'm going to give my God the leadership. And I want to tell you and encourage you, brothers and sisters too. You could be the type of man or woman that is faithful, that is godly. And with this, you can reshape the entirety of your story. If you have been on the wrong side for a long time, use one act of faithfulness, stand up for something, and God can use that life to literally reshape your life forever. Amen?